something I should have done myself. We'll now go to questions. Senator Wong.
Thank you, Mr President. Can I thank you for that statement at the outset? My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham. 4 years ago, Mr Morrison brought a lump of coal into the federal parliament, and in 2019 he claimed emissions reduction targets would wreck the economy. When did he change his mind?
The Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, Mr President. I thank Senator Wong for the question, albeit I don't accept the premise of all aspects of that question, Mr President. Indeed, the government went to the last election, as we have to previous elections, with commitments to emissions reductions targets. They weren't the same commitments as those opposite, that's true, just as we didn't have the same policies as those opposite. But we certainly went to the election with emissions reduction targets, and indeed, despite the fact that those opposite and others have always claimed that when we've outlined coalition policies to achieve those targets, they've always said it will fail, the targets won't be met, the government's policies won't achieve it. And guess what's happened on every single occasion? Of course, we've actually exceeded the targets. The policies have worked. The policies have delivered the emissions reductions targets. And that is what we continue to do, Mr President. It's what we continue to do in terms of delivering and achieving the 2030 emissions reductions targets, which we took to the last election, Mr President. Contrary to what Senator Wong said, the debate at the last election was about whether or not the Labor Party, with an increased target, had a plan, had a policy, had it costed, had any idea of how they were going to achieve it. The coalition had outlined how we were going to achieve our targets, and I'm very pleased to say we're on track to meet those targets. We're on track to exceed those targets. And in doing so, it helps to ensure that on a per-person basis, Australia's reduction of emissions is indeed amongst some of the biggest in the world. On a per-person basis, we're achieving close to a 50% reduction in emissions. But even on an absolute basis in terms of the rate of emissions reductions, we are achieving faster rates of emissions reductions than Canada or Japan or New Zealand or the United States. I don't say that to criticise those nations, it's just a statement of what is occurring and a demonstration that despite the fact those opposite like to try to talk Australia down, like to try to be negative in some ways in relation to our achievements, our emissions are trending down and we continue to deliver policies to achieve that.
Has expired. Senator Wong, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr Morrison has said electric vehicles would end the weekend and suggested that batteries to store renewable energy were as useful as a big banana. When did he decide he was wrong?
Minister.
Thanks, Mr President. Well, once again we get the selective quoting, the misrepresentation from those opposite. Mr Morrison talking about Labor policies to mandate, Labor policies. Senator Wong wants to go and ask questions that are about comments made by the Prime Minister in relation to Labor policies, obviously opens up scrutiny of Labor policies. Now, the Labor policies taken to the last election were about trying to mandate outcomes and to mandate outcomes that would have different impacts. Now, of course, technology moves on, time moves on, and as technology and time move on, we want to make sure that Australia is able to embrace the opportunities of the future, able to lead where we can in terms of the opportunities of the future. We're doing that through our investment in technology, not the type of taxes the Labor Party had proposed previously. Our investment is in making sure Australia can embrace the technologies that suit our nation, give our regions the advantages to secure jobs and opportunities in the future while lowering emissions.
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Wong, a second supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr Morrison and Mr Joyce have railed against climate action for over a decade. The Nationals are holding Mr Morrison to ransom, and Mr Morrison is refusing to take net zero by 2050 to the coalition party room. How can Australians possibly believe Mr Morrison's last-minute scramble to land a political deal on net zero by 2050, under 2 weeks out from Glasgow, is real?
Minister.
Well, Mr President, Australians should absolutely have confidence that our government will deliver the policies we implement and that those policies will work for the future on meeting the commitments Australia makes, because that's what we've done. That's what we've done time and time again. That's what we've done time and time again, Mr President. That when we said we would achieve Australia's emission reductions targets, and here were the policy profiles that we would do so, whilst abolishing Labor's carbon tax, we got on, we implemented those policies, and we've achieved those targets. and we've exceeded those targets. And that's what we're going to continue to do. That's why Australians should have faith. They can look at our track record. In fact, they should have the faith that our side of politics will achieve that without the types of policies those opposite have been known to embrace, that drive up costs of electricity, that drive up costs for Australian businesses, that hurt Australian families, that risk Australian jobs. That's what Australians should fear in terms of the policies of those opposite, because they've shown a track record with those sorts of policies. We've shown a track record of being able to lower emissions, lower power prices, but increase the strength of the Australian economy.
Expired. Senator order on my left. Senator Chandler, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Colbeck. Can the Minister provide an update on how Australia's vaccination rollout is progressing, particularly in our home state of Tasmania, and how the national plan is working to secure our COVID recovery so we can safely reopen and live with the virus?
Minister representing the Minister for Aged Care, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you, Senator Chandler, for your question. Mr President, yes, our home state certainly has something to celebrate by passing the first national plan milestone of 70% double-dosed in the last day. It's an important milestone, Mr President, and of course the nation has also passed 70%, Mr President, of vaccination post-16. Mr President, our nation continues to surge ahead, rolling up our sleeves with a total of 33,489,485 doses administered nationally as of last night, Mr President. 14.6 million Australians are now fully vaccinated, Mr President. That's 70.8% of those over 16, 81.6% of those over 50 and 86.6%, Mr President, of those over 70. We know that the people over 70 are the most vulnerable cohort when it comes to COVID-19, Mr President, and we now have over 95% of that population who have had at least one dose. Mr President, can I congratulate and commend those who have been instrumental in us achieving those targets so far. Our healthcare workers, our doctors, our pharmacists, our nurses, those in the state clinics who have all worked so hard, Mr President, in over 9,200 vaccine outlets around the country. Thank you for your work. We obviously need you to do more, Mr President. Our national plan, agreed by National Cabinet, is progressing just as we said it would, and yesterday we reached the commencement of Phase B, where we can start looking at lower restrictions and our country opening up once again.
Senator Chandler, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. Can the Minister outline what happens now that we have reached Phase B of the rollout?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. I don't need to be a psychic, Senator Watt. We've actually reached Phase B of the rollout. Mr President, we will see the country opening up, as we are in New South Wales and Victoria and here in the ACT, Mr President. As the Prime Minister said in an opinion piece that ran in Tasmania today, each and every vaccination, Mr President, brings us closer to bringing our country back together again, and I join with Senator Smith in his urging of Western Australians to roll their sleeves up and get the vaccine, Mr President, so we can join Western Australians in having a free country. Families and friends can get together, Mr President. Businesses can get going again, Mr President. Importantly, our small businesses can get back to work, firing up jobs. There can be a safe easing of border restrictions as the vaccination rates continue to surge across Australia, Mr President, and we can all start to take our lives back.
Senator Chandler, a second supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President, and I thank the Minister for his response. Can the Minister advise what preparations the government has made for the rollout of a booster program?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Thank you, Mr President. A booster program will give us a boost in protection to those who are fully vaccinated with their second dose, Mr President. Of course, that's 70% of the Australian population. At the moment, the plan is being progressed through the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immigration, ATAGI, and we expect advice will be provided to the Health Minister in the
Senator
not
Keneally.
too distant future, Mr. President. The government has been preparing for boosters
Senator
and
Thorpe.
secured 151 million doses for 22 and 23 to ensure all Australians can access a booster if it is recommended by the medical experts. Maintaining high levels of vaccination in our community will ensure we are protecting everyone, particularly those who are most vulnerable to COVID-19, including those, of course, in our loved ones in aged care, Mr. President. We will be building on the strong foundation that we have already established through the vaccine rollout.
Minister. Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is to the Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister and Leader of the Nationals, Senator Mackenzie. I refer to the National Subcommittee consisting of Senator Mackenzie, Mr Littleproud, Mr Pitt and Mr Hogan, settling the Nationals' election wish list for Mr Morrison in return for support of net zero by 2050. How much taxpayer money have the Nationals demanded Mr Morrison spend to gain their support for net zero by 2050?
The Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Thank you, Senator Sheldon, for your question. Well, as we've been very, very clear as the second party of government, we are taking our time to carefully consider the proposition put forward by the Prime Minister that Australia will be committing to net zero by 2050
Order. Senator Watt.
in Glasgow. That is
Senator
actually
Gallagher.
what rural and regional Australians sent us here to do, and we don't apologise for that. Now, I know, as Doug Cameron and I was privileged to serve with Doug Cameron in this chamber for many years, made note of how your party processes operate, and that you'd all had lobotomies, and you basically just do what your leader says, and you're a bunch of zombies, as I recall, direct quote in Rabbit Ears. In our political party—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Watt, on a point of order.
On relevance, in light of your ruling, this question was very straight about the amount of money that the Nationals have demanded. The minister is veering off into exactly the kind of political attack that you said was not permitted.
There were two parts of my presentation to the Senate, Senator Watt. I think you've selectively quoted one of them, but I will bring the minister back to the question. You have the call, Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. And so the process that our political party has determined to undertake is to consult our colleagues to understand and appreciate their needs and concerns for the next 30 years, not for the next 6 months towards the election, and to then put forward a document that is based on the principles that will underpin the negotiations between the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister. We've been very, very clear. This is not about 30 pieces of silver. This is not about some beads and some mirrors. This is actually about how do we secure and protect rural and regional Australians and our industries in a decarbonised future.
Senator Keneally.
That is about doing our job. And so I'm very proud to be part of a political party and part of a subcommittee that is actually focused on securing the regions in this proposed future that the Prime Minister and the government is seeking to deliver. Now, if that actually can't
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Sheldon, a supplementary question.
Have any Liberal members requested that the Nationals include particular items in their pre-election wish list to Mr Morrison?
Minister.
Well, I think we're always happy to talk to our Liberal colleagues about how the National Party can help them deliver on their needs and interests for their communities. I mean, at the end of the day, we've been sent here to do one thing, and that is to stand up for our communities, and that is exactly what we're doing. So, Senator Canavan, that interjection wasn't was relevant, and so I'll take it. The issue was that who I haven't received submissions from is the Labor Party members for rural and regional Australia,
please,
how we can actually assist them and assist their foresters.
Please resume your seat. Senator Watt, on a point of order.
Again on relevance, Mr President. A very straight question, no hyperbole. Have any Liberal members requested that the Nationals include particular items on the list they're providing to Mr Morrison? No hyperbole. It's a straight question.
Senator Watt, I've allowed you to restate the question. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you very much. You know, there are a lot of Liberal Party colleagues that have been concerned about what a move towards net zero by 2050 may mean for rural and regional communities.
Order.
Now, they've made those. You've quoted those back to me in the chamber this week. It should not be a surprise to you at all.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Sheldon, a second supplementary question.
Will the minister guarantee the full details of any Nationals agreement to support net zero by 2050 will be made public?
Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr President. What I will guarantee you, I won't be guaranteeing you, Senator Sheldon, to disclose what the National Party room discusses, but what I will be able to guarantee you is that our party will never resile from standing up for the people that sent us here. And it is very, very sad to watch the party that used to stand up for the working class in this country fall over in the face of the threat of the Greens in your inner-city urban seats, and member after member, and other than Senator Ciccone from Victoria, you are silent on water policy, you are silent on forestry and standing up for forestry workers, you are silent on food processors and food manufacturing. You know what? What a joke you've become to the people that actually— you were set up in Balcaldon, out in regional Queensland. And
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Rice.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Families and Social Services. Minister, this week is Anti-Poverty Week. Yesterday, former New South Wales Liberal Minister Prue Goward was condemned by anti-poverty organisations and advocates as being disturbing, abusive and inaccurate for saying out loud how Liberals like her view people trapped in poverty as huge cost centres, as an underclass of Australians who are neglectful parents and almost entirely lacking in discipline. Minister, as another Liberal minister, will you join me in condemning her appalling statements and abuse of some of the most vulnerable people in our community?
Just before I call the minister, interjections are always disorderly, but particularly during the asking of questions. If you want everyone in the chamber, particularly me, to hear the question, then I do need some silence. The Minister for Families and Social Services, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Rice for her question. In the absence of actually having seen the comments to which Senator Rice refers, I won't make any specific comment about that, but what I will say is that I take my responsibility as a Minister for Families and Social Services extremely seriously, and the absolute total focus of the activities of my office and my department are making sure that we support the most vulnerable people in Australia. Unquestionably, that is our single purpose and role. Now, whether that be through providing them with payments, whether supporting them in working age payments, or whether that be through some of their pension.
Oh, sorry, Senator Rice.
Relevance, even if the minister hasn't seen the questions, I said what they were, and I just asking her and condemning them. Of the people trapped in poverty are huge cost centres, as an underclass of Australians who are neglectful parents and almost entirely lacking in discipline.
I've given you the chance to repeat part of the question. I cannot direct the minister how to answer the question. Minister, you have the call for 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I reiterate my initial comments. But I am not going to make a comment about something that you're saying, but I will absolutely guarantee to this chamber unequivocally that my absolute focus is making sure that the resources of my department and the resources that are provided by the taxpayers of Australia to support vulnerable Australians, to make sure that we support them when they find themselves in situations, whether it be unemployed, whether it be when they're victims of domestic violence, whether it be supporting the states and territories in their frontline service provision, in the case of child protection and the like. I mean, absolute focus of my department is always to support the most vulnerable people in our community. And that is why we have always been so tremendously focused not only on creating jobs but actually working with Australians to get them out of unemployment. Because you refer to Poverty Week, Senator Rice, and one of the key things that has come out of many of the reports, some this week
Senator
and
Thorpe.
others that have been released around this particular issue, is that we know that people who are on unemployment benefits do it way tougher than those people who've got a job, and that's why we're focused on getting them into work.
Please resume your seat. Senator Rice, order. Senator Rice, please resume your seat. I just asked for order in the chamber while questions were being asked. Senator Rice.
Thanks, President. Minister, poverty is a political choice. Last year, your government increased income support during the lockdowns, but this year hundreds of thousands of people have lived through lockdowns on payments below the poverty line, going without food, without medicines and at risk of homelessness. And the removal of COVID disaster payments means thousands more people are now joining them. Minister, do you agree that the job seeker rate of $44 a day is not enough to live on?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well,
Senator Thorpe.
No government has done more to walk side by side to support Australians through this COVID pandemic. We have supported Australians, whether it be through increases in the job seeker payment last year, whether it be through the COVID disaster payment that was administered through Senator Mackenzie's department to support those people in Australia who found themselves in lockdowns of recent times, whether it be the business supports that have been put in place. But we also understand that as a government we have a responsibility to maintain the sustainability of payments that are made. We have to make sure that we support people in a safety net.
Apologies, Senator Rice.
Mr President, point of order. The question was whether the minister agreed that the job seeker rate of $44 a day is not enough to live on. Relevance. Relevance. She is not going to the relevance of the question. Is $44 a day enough to live on?
Senator Rice, you've had another opportunity to restate part of the question. It was a very broad question. The minister was being directly relevant. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And as I was saying, the obligation of governments are to make sure that these sorts of payments are sustainable into the future. We have to balance supporting people when they find themselves out of work, but also making sure that the incentive is there for them to go to work. That's why we create jobs, and that's why we are the government.
Senator Rice, a second supplementary question.
Minister, I've heard from many constituents who inadvertently received both JobSeeker and JobKeeper, and they're now being pursued for those debts. Minister, why are you going after people on income support but not taking on the big corporations that profited with billions of dollars on JobKeeper?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, firstly, I would say that we need to be very clear around the fact that any fraudulent activity in relation to any payments that are received, no matter who they're received by, whether they be by businesses or individuals, are always pursued by government, because it is our obligation as the custodians of taxpayers' funds to make sure that people who have received something that they are not entitled, that we pursue that. I would also say that in making sure that when we put these things in place, we were very, very clear to make sure that people understood that if they were receiving JobKeeper, that they were required to declare it as income. If you go onto our website, that was very, very clear that was earnings, and you had to declare those earnings. But to your point, Senator Rice, we will pursue anybody who has received taxpayer funding when they have not been entitled
Minister,
to it.
time For the answer has expired. Senator Patrick.
Thank you, Mr President. And my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Defence. The 2009 Defence White Paper foreshadowed increased tension in the region and announced the need to increase our submarine force from 6 to 12 submarines. The RAN was supposed to have 12 new submarines by 2039. Now that the smoke has dissipated, now that the mirrors have been removed, it is clear that under the new plan, in 2039, we will instead have only 5 ageing Collins-class submarines. In October last year, the then DFAT Secretary, Her Excellency Frances Addison, advised that the China-Taiwan situation concerned her more than any time in the last 3.5 decades of her career. Why has the government left us so vulnerable with so few submarines under these circumstances?
The Minister representing the Minister for Defence, Senator Payne.
Thanks, Senator Patrick, for his question. And in acknowledging the number of points that the senator made, I would note firstly that the government has clearly stated the fact is that Australia's strategic environment has deteriorated in ways that weren't anticipated even 5 years ago. We know that the Indo-Pacific is now the global epicentre of strategic competition, and that's why the AUKUS agreement between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States is so important and so necessary. In terms of capability itself, we are delivering as a government on our commitment to deliver to our servicewomen and men the equipment they need to keep us safe. And I can confirm in that context that defence spending under this government will rise above 2% of GDP in the coming financial year. There are a number of additional capabilities in which we are investing, Senator Patrick, along with those already planned, that will address the potential security challenges in the coming decades. We are extending the life of all 6 of our Collins-class submarines. All 6 submarines will undergo life-of-type extension within the budget of $4.3 to $6.4 billion, extending the life of each submarine by 10 years. We're also investing in advanced long-range strike capabilities, including Tomahawk cruise missiles, long-range anti-ship missiles and joint air-to-surface standoff missiles. The Tomahawk cruise missiles will be fielded on our Hobart-class destroyers. They're going to enable our maritime assets to strike land targets at greater distance with better precision. The long-range anti-ship missiles for our F-18 Super Hornets can strike land and maritime targets. The JSAMs for our FA-18, 18F Super Hornets and in our future F-35s as well. We're enhancing our capabilities in offensive cyber, in hypersonic systems, in autonomous systems, in space capabilities. And we are confident, as I said at the beginning of your question, that these will address the potential security challenges in the coming decades as we move to the new submarine acquisition.
Expired. Senator Patrick, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. So, greater tension, fewer submarines. Last week, Admiral Noonan conceded that by 2040, further extending the life of the Collins boats will leave them, and I quote, at far greater risk of detection. Will the government purchase off-the-shelf submarines to be built in Adelaide to serve as the Navy's Super Hornet interim solution to the F-35?
Minister.
That's a fascinating metaphor, an underwater Super Hornet F-35. Thank you, Senator Patrick, for your question. And I understand the point that you are raising, but with your experience, I would think you would appreciate how inefficient it might be for the Royal Australian Navy to try to operate 3 different classes of submarines simultaneously that require different basing, different crewing, different sustainment. So the Collins-class submarine life-of-type extension remains an essential element of the government's plan to maintain a potent and agile submarine capability for Australia. It has a core work package that includes updates and upgrades to diesel engines, to the main motor and power conversion equipment. Both defence and industry are continuing to progress Collins-class submarine life-of-type extension work on schedule to support the first boat that will need an extension. That's HMAS Farncombe, as you know, commencing in mid-2026. And ASC will lead the life-of-type extension design and implementation activities.
Minister, the time for the answer has expired. Senator Patrick, you have a second supplementary?
I do. We have a submarine construction workforce in disarray after the cancellation of the attack submarine program. The nuclear submarine built in Adelaide for delivery in 2040, by simple calculation, will commence construction in the mid-2030s. We don't have a workforce valley of death, rather we have a Grand Canyon. What will the government be doing to fill this Grand Canyon?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. I absolutely disagree with the proposition that Senator Patrick puts in relation to that. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that critical skills are retained in the shipbuilding sector in Australia. In fact, our commitment to continuous naval shipbuilding will support at least 15,000 Australian jobs by the end of the decade, and over 5,000 of those will be in South Australia. We know that the Osborne Naval Shipyard in South Australia is one of two principal shipyards. We know Osborne is hosting the construction of 9 Hunter-class frigates, plus major upgrades to the Navy's 3 AWDs and full-cycle docking of 6 Collins-class submarines. The Morrison government, frankly, has delivered on our commitment to provide, as I said, our servicewomen and men with the vital equipment they need to keep us safe in the budget. And what we are doing is being committed to finding a role for every skilled shipbuilding worker impacted by the attack class decision. We'll partner with ASC to manage and implement the new sovereign shipbuilding talent pool as well, which will redeploy the existing shipbuilding workforce throughout current and new shipbuilding programs.
Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Attorney-General, Senator Cash. Can the Minister update the Senate on how Australia's national security remains under the real threat of foreign interference and espionage?
The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Payne. Oh, sorry, I missed the Attorney-General. Sorry, Attorney-General.
Thank you very much, Mr President, and I thank Senator Abetz for the question, and I acknowledge his long interest in national security matters in Australia. And, Mr President, whilst the government has been focused on tackling the threat of COVID-19, we have never ever lost sight of the many challenges to our safety and security that exist in what we know is a rapidly changing security environment. As Australians would be aware, the threat environment constantly evolves. And in fact, it may come as a surprise to most Australians to know that the levels of espionage and foreign interference are higher now than during the Cold War. We know that there are foreign agents working with intent to damage our society. They want to undermine our security, and they want to interfere with the work of governments and ultimately with the work of our country. In their recent annual report, ASIO Director-General Mike Burgess said that espionage could well rival terrorism as a threat to our interests and to our safety. And of course, as members of parliament, it is incredibly important for us to remind ourselves that we can also be targets for foreign interference and espionage, and especially those who aspire to be ministers in any government. As the Director-General Mike Burgess said, foreign spies are attempting to obtain classified information about Australia's trade relationships, defence and intelligence capabilities. They are seeking to develop targeted relationships with current and former politicians and current and former security clearance holders. We should always be careful, Mr President, of underplaying the danger of being cavalier about the intentions of these types of people, of these characters and actors, should our paths cross with them as we go about our duties. As members of parliament, we must always remain ever vigilant to the threats posed by espionage and foreign interference.
Minister, the time has expired. Senator Abetz, a supplementary question.
I thank the attorney for her answer, albeit a very concerning answer. Can I ask, how is the government responding to the changing nature of foreign interference, and how do nefarious actors now work against our nation's interests?
Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr President. Well, we know from our intelligence and our security agencies that foreign interference is changing, and unfortunately it is expanding, especially with the ubiquity of digital technology now right across the globe. We know in particular that some communities are targeted by foreign actors in an attempt to recruit and even unknowingly push foreign nations' interests in and around Australia. And that is why, as a government, we have strengthened Australia's capacity to defend against foreign interference with legislative tools. These key pieces of legislation, they are helping our intelligence and our law enforcement agencies continue to have the legislative framework and the tools that they need to appropriately deal with and disrupt these actors. We will continue to make any changes necessary to ensure that, as a nation, we can respond to changing threats from foreign actors and protect Australia's interests.
Senator Abetz, second supplementary question.
Can the minister also update the Senate on how the government continues to support our vital intelligence and security agencies to target and disrupt foreign interference and protect our country's interests?
Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And our government has invested over $145 million since 2018-19 to bolster our response to foreign interference in Australia. Mr President, in the 2021-22 budget, we allocated the largest long-term investment in ASIO to address the complex and dynamic national security environment with $1.3 billion over the next decade. We've also passed legislation that will ensure that the Foreign Minister, on the advice of our security agencies, can veto agreements with foreign countries struck by state and local governments, as well as with universities. This legislation will ensure that any deal with a foreign country is in accordance with Australia's national interest. Mr President, as I've said, we know that foreign actors are now using cyber tactics to further interfere with Australia's interests, and that's why we've made a huge investment with the Australian Signals Directorate.
Senator Grogan.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck. Mr Morrison's original transition plan, which was based on an outbreak of only 30 cases, estimates that 12,000 people will end up in hospital, including more than 2,700 in ICU, with over 1,400 dying. We've since seen more than 1,000 cases a day across the country. How many hospitalisations, ICU admissions and deaths does the Morrison-Joyce government now expect as states begin to open up?
The Minister representing the Minister for Health, Senator Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr President. Thanks, Senator Grogan, for a question. First question. Mr President, the National Plan is designed to provide protection and provide advice to governments, state, territory and Commonwealth, as to the parameters with which we can start to reopen the national economy, Mr President. And so once we reached 70% of the population fully vaccinated, which we have now, we can start to take some measures, and you've seen those things commencing in the states and territories, Mr President. Of course, the whole purpose of the national plan is to minimise the number of infections of the virus, Mr President, and also subsequent to that hospitalisations and presentations at ICUs, and of course to minimise the number of people who pass away. So the whole objective is to minimise those numbers, Mr President. That's the point of the plan, and that's why we continue to encourage Australians to access vaccines. We've reached 70% of the population over 16 who are vaccinated. We encourage more Australians in every walk of life, in every state and territory, to go out and access the vaccine so that we can continue to do that, Mr President, because the whole purpose of the exercise is to minimise the number of cases that we have in the community, and that, of course, minimises the number of Australians who may be hospitalised, Mr President, or minimises the number of people who may be subject to ICU, or, Mr President, those, unfortunately, who might pass away. Mr President, we know that there will be COVID circulating in the community. The best way, Mr President, that Australians can protect themselves, protect their families and protect the communities, Mr President, is to get vaccinated, and the more people who are vaccinated, Mr President, the less people who will be subject to the virus, its spread and, of course, hospitalisation and ICU.
Senator Grogan, a supplementary question.
Senator Colbeck, the Australian Medical Association has warned that the shortage of hospital beds, overcrowded emergency departments and longer waits were, and I quote, risking the lives of all Australians. Why has the Morrison-Joyce government refused to act on the urgent calls for funding from all state and territory health ministers before it's too late?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank Senator Grogan for the question. Mr. President,
Order on my left.
Mr. President, the Australian government—
Minister, please resume your seat. Order. Order. The minister had not even commenced his answer when the interjection started. Interjections are always disorderly. Minister, you have the call. Order. Senator Ayres, I literally just ruled. Senator Colbeck, Minister, you have the call.
Thank you. It's a bit of a record, Mr. President. I actually got to 7 seconds once before I was stopped, so to get it before I start is not doing too bad. Mr. President, all states and territories, as a part of their conversations with the Australian government, have indicated they have adequate capacity to meet demand based on the Doherty modelling, supplemented by their own modelling, Mr. President. And during COVID, the Australian government has invested, along with the states and territories, into the health system just for COVID in excess of $6.6 billion, Mr. President. $6.6 billion, and that funding has been put in, particularly with respect to the state health systems, on a 50-50 basis, Mr. President. So $6.6 billion invested by the Australian government in support of the states and territories in fighting
Minister,
COVID.
the time for the answer has expired. Senator Grogan, a second supplementary question.
Thank you. AMA President Dr Omar Khorshid has said, and I quote, "Once COVID comes in, the only way we can look after people with COVID is to stop looking after all the other people that we are currently looking after." Will the minister guarantee Australians will be safe?
Minister.
They're all there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, the Australian government moved very early to put in place a number of measures to support the health system in the event of significant outbreaks of COVID. And there have been a continuation of measures, obviously, that have been undertaken since then. One of the first things, Mr. President, that we did to support the public health system was the private hospitals agreement, Mr. President, which allowed those private hospitals to support the public health system in the case of a huge surge in numbers. Of course, Mr. President, as we vaccinate more Australians, as more Australians take up the opportunity to vaccinate, to have a vaccination, that again reduces the possibilities of COVID transmitting through the community. It protects individuals from serious illness, hospitalisation and death. That's the point of the vaccination process, and that is also factored into the Doherty modelling that is dictating our opening up process, Mr. President. So all of this carefully calculated and agreed with the states.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Davey.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Resources and Water, Senator Ruston. Can the Minister please advise the Senate how the Liberals and Nationals plan to position Australia as a leading supplier of critical minerals and rare earth elements, and how this will create jobs and boost investment in mining industries while meeting the growing global demand for new energy technologies required in a modern economy?
The Minister representing the Minister for Resources and Water, Senator Ruston.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Davey for her question, because Senator Davey understands that the coalition government is a government that backs our minerals and our resources sector. Critical minerals and rare earth elements are a really, really exciting new chapter for our resource sector, and Australia is extraordinarily blessed. We have some of the largest deposits of rare minerals and critical minerals in the world. We've got the second largest reserve of lithium, the sixth largest rare earths reserve, and substantial reserves of cobalt, magnesium, tungsten and zirconium. So critical minerals have a broad range of applications, as we know, ranging from things as simple as batteries and mobile phones, but going up to things like wind turbines and even fighter jets. The application is extraordinary. And that's why, as a coalition government, we are backing this sector, because we understand that the opportunity for Australia is absolutely huge. We've put together a $2 billion loan facility, the Critical Minerals Facility, which will ensure that Australia remains at the absolute forefront of the emerging opportunities in the global resources sector. And our loan facility will help unearth critical minerals and get developments off the ground. In doing so, these projects will help secure vital supplies of resources needed to drive a technology-led energy recovery. These materials will be used in advanced technologies such as renewable energy, aerospace, defence, electric vehicles, communications, telecommunications and agri-tech, which I'm sure Senator Davey is particularly excited about. The lithium industry alone is forecast to be worth $400 billion globally by 2030. But in addition to our global resources strategy, we will also identify new markets for critical minerals and facilitate opportunities for expanding trade. We must ensure that Australia harnesses these new markets in the interests of all Australians.
Senator Davey, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Minister. And I am very passionate about Australia's growing critical minerals mining. And can the minister outline who will benefit from the government's investment in critical minerals?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, everybody benefits from this activity. Studies indicate that, as I said, global demand for critical minerals needed for clean technology applications are going to grow exponentially over the coming decades. Australia is well placed to become a really reliable supplier of these critical minerals. Who will benefit? It's very, very simple, Senator Davey. Our investment will mean three key things: more jobs, more expert options and a stronger economy for Australia. Jobs for the next generation of engineers, tradies, apprentices who build and operate these mines. Jobs in construction and infrastructure development to help get the product to market. Jobs in defence, aerospace, high-end manufacturing and other sectors that will use our critical minerals. Jobs to support new and emerging technologies and overall more support for our regional communities who supply these critical minerals to the rest of the world. In short, Senator Davey, everyone will benefit in Australia.
Senator Davey, a second supplementary question.
Thank you. And more specifically for my interests, how will the export and potential value add of rare minerals benefit local towns and regional centres like Parkes and Cobar and the southern western districts of New South Wales where critical minerals are mined?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr President. Well, there are a number of areas in Australia that are already seeing benefits from critical minerals, such as the Parkes precinct in your home state of New South Wales, Senator Davey. The New South Wales government estimates that through continued investment in critical minerals, more than 2,300 construction and ongoing jobs could be created for central New South Wales. The 9 most advanced critical mineral projects in Australia could support 7,000 jobs and will unlock nearly $8 billion in investment for regional and rural communities alone. Australia's current battery industry is estimated to already contribute $1.3 billion to our GDP and 6,000 jobs, mostly in regional Australia. The Future Batteries Industry CRC estimated diversified battery industries could add 34,700 new jobs in Australia and $7.4 billion to Australia's economy, much of which will be the benefit of rural and regional Australia.
Time for the answer has expired. Senator Watt.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mackenzie. The President of the National Farmers Federation, Fiona Simpson, has warned that if Australia does not adopt a net zero by 2050 emissions target, it would, quote, punish farmers and that, quote, we can't afford to squander this opportunity. Is Ms Simpson wrong?
The Minister representing the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. And it's fantastic to have Senator Watt ask a question about agriculture. He's been here a while, talks a big game from Brisbane on behalf of rural and regional Queensland, but it's fantastic. And I hope he's also met with the NFF's, well, you know, I'm sorry, I'm from the south, Brisbane, Gold Coast, it's all the same to me. He talks a big game. I'm hoping you have met with AgForce, who is the Queensland representative on the NFF, because they actually have very strong views of this particular issue. They are very, very clear. Whilst obviously agriculture is making great inroads into lowering emissions and different production systems, whether it's the grains industry and carbon sequestration, whether it is the beef industry committing to net zero by 2030, without a carbon tax,
Minister,
I might say, which your
Minister,
government—
please resume your seat. Senator Watt, on a point of order.
On relevance, Mr President, I know Senator Mackenzie isn't close enough to the farming community to know that there's a difference
Senator
between
Watt,
the NFF
Senator
and
Watt,
AgForce.
points of order.
Our question
Senator
is about—
Watt, sit down. Points of order are not an opportunity to make gratuitous comments across the chamber. You have the call, but please make a point of order.
On relevance, the question was about the National Farmers Federation rather than any other farming group that the minister chooses to talk about.
Senator Watt, Senator Watt. Senator Canavan, on the point of order.
Thank you, Mr President. On the point of order, if Senator Watt actually knew something about the agricultural industry, he would know that AgForce is a member of NFF. That AgForce is a member of NFF, so it's exactly relevant. It's exactly relevant, but he knows nothing about farmers.
Seat. Senator Wong. Senator Canavan, resume your seat. Senator Wong, on the point of order. Silence. Order in the chamber. Order. Order. Senator Wong, on the point of order.
Well, Mr President, I'd ask you to reflect after question time. You did deal very sternly with Senator Watt very quickly. Senator Canavan continued to ignore your— I haven't finished my submission, Mr President.
Order on my right.
We just want even-handedness, sir.
Senator Wong, Senator Wong, Senator Wong, I was calling Senator Canavan to order. Senator Gallagher. Senator Watt, had you completed your point of order? I'm listening. Order on my right. I was listening very carefully to the answer. You've had the chance to direct the minister back to the question. I do not believe I need to do more than that at this point. I am listening carefully to the answer. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Mr President. And speak to Fiona Simpson, the President of the NFF, regularly. I also speak to Georgie Somerset, the President of your own Farmers Federation, a member of the National Farmers Federation, Georgie Somerset, President of AgForce. And you know what? They've made very, very clear to me, to the Coalition and to the National Party room in the context of this debate, is that farmers have done their fair share, that they have done the heavy lifting and that they want that recognised. And you know why they did the heavy lifting? Because of the Queensland Government's native vegetation laws. It is because of the Palaszczuk state Labor government's—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Wong, on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr President. Point of order, direct relevance.
Order. Order.
Thank you, Mr President. Point of order, direct relevance. The question went to a statement by the President of the NFF as to if Australia doesn't adopt a net zero by 2050, it will punish farmers, and whether or not Ms Simpson was wrong. I didn't intervene. I didn't raise a point of order earlier about the lengthy discussion about AgForce, etc. This is now an entirely different subject.
Senator Mackenzie.
I've been
Order on my right. Order on my right. Senator
You forget
Wong.
that I was Shadow Minister for Trade. A lot of people I had to talk to.
Order.
You remember that.
This is not an opportunity for discussion
I'm
across
very
the
happy
chamber.
to answer questions. I might actually stick
Senator
to the
Wong.
question.
Senator Wong,
Direct
please
relevance.
complete your
Thank
point
you.
of order.
Yes, well, I think I have. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Canavan, on the point of order.
The minister was clearly referring to the arguments that the National Farmers Federation have made this week around their position, which does relate to tree clearing and native vegetation laws around this country.
Senator Wong, I'm prepared to make a ruling. I believe that while Senator Mackenzie has not been in breach of standing orders, I am listening carefully to the answer. I do think there is a risk of straying, but I do not believe that Senator Mackenzie has strayed from the question. Senator Mackenzie, you have the call.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I think I did touch all the high notes. The National Farmers Federation, Fiona Simpson, net zero. What farmers are absolutely sick and tired of is a Labor Party that doesn't understand the contribution that they make and understand that they actually want to be compensated and recognised for the contribution they've already made to the reduction in emissions in this country.
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Watt, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Minerals Council of Australia, which represents resources companies including BHP, Rio Tinto and Whitehaven Coal, has endorsed net zero by 2050, saying the minerals sector has confidence a net zero emissions by 2050 target can be reached. Is the Minerals Council of Australia wrong?
Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you very, very much. And I do note in putting their support forward for an aspirational target of net zero by 2050, the Minerals Council a couple of weeks ago made it very, very clear that we can't do that without carbon capture and storage technology being implemented in this country. So we look forward to the Labor Party supporting National Party amendments to the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, which will do exactly that, which will actually ensure that the dirty deal done by Gillard and Brown to establish the Clean Energy Corporation will actually fund carbon capture and storage.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Wong on a point of order.
Well, there certainly are dirty deals at the moment, and Senator Mackenzie could talk about them. But
Senator
my
Wong,
point of order
again.
My point of order.
Senator Rennick.
I'm happy to give leave for Senator Rennick to speak.
Senator Wong, this is not.
You want to do that? We will give you. If you stand up and seek leave, we will give you leave.
Senator Wong, resume your seat. Senator Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Wong. Points of order are not an opportunity to debate matters across the chamber, nor for interjections from my right. Senator Wong, Senator Wong, Senator Rennick, Senator Watt. I will give Senator Wong the opportunity to restate her point of order. Senator Wong. Have you finished, Senator Wong? All right. I am listening carefully to the answer. You've had the chance to bring the minister back to the question. Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. As I was saying, carbon capture and storage technologies, along with nuclear technologies, are recognised by the International Energy Agency as the two technologies which are actually going to be essential to getting to a low-emissions future. So I actually look forward to the Labor Party and the Greens supporting 21st century technologies that will—
Minister, resume your seat. Now, okay, if the chamber agrees, we can do the supplementary question, the final supplementary question. There is no objection. Senator Watt, second supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the comments of the National Farmers Federation and the Minerals Council of Australia, when will the fake farmers and the fake miners in the National Party listen to the real farmers and the real miners who support net zero by 2050?
Minister.
OK, well, you know, I am a little concerned, Mr President, that the amount of point of orders that have been taken during this answer have meant that I actually don't get asked my Dixer by Senator Matt Canavan on the fabulous work we're doing in Queensland for the beef industry, and Blair and Josie Angus up at. But I love the fact that Senator Watt thinks it's too cute by half talking about fake and real farmers. I would put $100 on the President's table that you have never sat down with a real farmer in your life. I am going to ask Georgie Somerset, the President of AgForce, to come and pay you a little visit so she can actually talk you through what your outrageous state Labor government has done to Queensland farmers, and that we are meeting and beating our emission targets as a result of their hard work. We will always stand up for farmers.
Minister, your time has expired. We have now hit a hard marker. Sorry, I just need to quickly consult with the